Hey there, just a heads up, this episode of the Judo Science Podcast was created with help from AI. Some of the voices you'll hear are synthetic, but the ideas come from real research and real judo.
The gentle way.
Right.
That is the literal translation of the Japanese word judo. And if you've never seen it, that name, it paints a very specific picture, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. It sounds incredibly zen.
Totally.
Like you should have a cup of herbal tea immediately after.
Right. Very flowy robes, maybe some deep breathing while birds are chirping. But then you actually walk into a dojo or, you turn on the Olympics, and the reality is, well, it's jarring.
It really is.
You see people basically using the laws of physics to slam another human being into the earth at high velocity, or choke them, or hyperextend an elbow.
Yeah, it is probably one of the biggest misnomers in the entire sporting world. Because when we actually look at the data, and we have a huge stack of it today, the gentle way takes a very, very real physical toll.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into a whole collection of major studies from Japan to Europe. We really want to understand the price of admission for this sport. Not just how people get hurt, but who gets hurt, and maybe even why.
And the sources we have are fantastic for this. We've got a massive survey that looked at severe injuries in over 4,600 athletes.
Wow.
Then we have a really specific one from Akoto, focusing just on Japanese collegiate athletes.
So the people training like it's their full-time job?
Exactly. And we even have a study by Carvalho that looks at the young guns, the high-level junior competitors, so we're covering the whole spectrum.
Okay, but before we get into all the, the gory details, is the mission here just to scare everyone away from judo?
Not at all. I mean, statistically, judo is actually safer than sports like rugby or American football.
Okay.
But the mission, if you want to call it that, is to see the patterns. Injuries in judo aren't random. They follow a structure. And if you can see the structure, you can navigate it.
I like that. So let's look at the map. How common is this? If I step onto the mat, the tatami, what are my odds of walking away with a limp?
Well, the numbers are pretty sobering. If you look at that Kanoda study on the Japanese collegiate athletes, they found that 61% of them reported an injury in a single year.
61%? Wait, so more than half the team. If you've got 10 people on the mat, 6 of them are hurt by the end of the season.
Essentially, yes. If you look at the Carvalho study, the one of those younger, hyper-competitive athletes.
The international competitors.
Right. The number jumps to 83%.
83. That's not a risk anymore. That's a certainty. Being healthy is the exception.
It really seems that way at the elite level. But here's the first major twist in the data. When you picture a sports injury, where do you see it happening?
Oh, in the finals. For sure. The lights are on, the crowd's yelling, you're going 100% for the gold medal. That's when you push too far.
That's what you'd think. High intensity, high risk. But the data says the opposite.
Really?
The Carvalho study showed that 71% of injuries happen during training.
71%.
And Kanoda's study backs that up. Injuries in training were 2.6 times more frequent than in competition.
That is completely counterintuitive. You're telling me the dojo is the danger zone.
Think about the sheer volume. A competition match is, 4 minutes? You might fight 5 times in a day. That's 20 minutes of combat.
Right.
But to get ready, you're on the mat 2 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. It's not the big explosion that gets you. It's the Tuesday night randori, the sparring, when you're tired and you just make one sloppy move.
It's the grind.
It's the grind. It's the thousands of reps.
Okay, so we know it's happening on a Tuesday night. Now I want to know what's breaking. I'm going to guess back injuries are number one, right? All that lifting and twisting.
That's a good guess. The back is definitely involved, but it's not the king. The Akoto survey showed it's almost an even split, 41% upper body, 39% lower body.
Okay.
But when you zoom in, there are 2 body parts that stand head and shoulders above the rest.
And they are?
The knees and the shoulders, they're the big 2. Each one accounts for about 23% of all specific injuries.
Wow. So half of all injuries are just knees and shoulders. Why those 2?
To understand that, we have to look at the mechanics. Carvalho found that almost 90% of injuries happen during tachiwaza, the standing phase.
The throwing part, which makes sense. Gravity is not your friend.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. The study found that shoulder injuries are 1.8 times more likely to happen during defense than attack.
During defense, so it's not me throwing you that hurts my shoulder, it's me trying to stop you from throwing me.
Precisely. Your brain just screams, do not go over.
I resist.
You pull back, or worse, you post. You stick your arm out straight to catch yourself.
Oh, I can see that.
Now all the force of my throw and your body weight is going through that one stiff arm. Your shoulder becomes the breaking point. Physics doesn't care about your rotator cuff.
Ouch. That is a painful visual. It's like trying to stop a car with your bare hand.
That's a great analogy. That defensive instinct is what causes the damage. If you just accepted the fall, you'd be fine.
So the gentle way is only gentle if you're actually gentle with it. If you yield.
Exactly. Now, on the ground, in Nawaza, the risk drops a lot. But if you do get hurt down there, it's almost all upper limb. Shoulders, elbows, wrists.
Arm bars.
Arm bars and joint locks.
Right.
But even then, 72% of those are from direct contact. A sudden collision or a torque, not just a slow stretch.
Okay, so lots of banged up shoulders and knees. But I want to talk about severity. There's, I need some ice, and then there's, I heard a pop and my season is over.
Right.
What are the career enders here?
The Akoto study is very clear on this. They call it the ACL nightmare.
The anterior cruciate ligament, the 3 letters every athlete dreads.
It's just devastating. According to the data, 64% of athletes with ACL tears lost more than 6 months of training.
6 months. For an athlete, that's an entire season. That's a lifetime.
And that's often the best case scenario. The really scary part is the return rate. Only 32% of them ever return to their same performance level.
Wait, only 1 in 3.
1 in 3. 24% came back at a strongly reduced level, and 5% just stopped judo entirely. It completely changes your life's path.
That is just brutal. Is there anything else that's that bad?
There is one, actually. It's less common, but it causes a higher percentage of athletes to quit for good.
What is it?
The vertebral disc prolapse.
Slip discs. Spine injuries?
Yep. That one caused 8% of athletes to quit the sport completely. You can rebuild a knee, but a bad back. That stays with you. It affects everything.
That is a sobering thought. Did they see any difference between men and women in who gets these big injuries?
They did, and it's a pretty sharp distinction. The Akoto data showed female athletes had significantly higher rates of those ACL ruptures. And alarmingly, the injuries tend to happen at a younger age for them.
So you have teenage girls blowing out their knees before they even hit their prime?
Sadly, yes. It's a known issue across many sports. On the other side, the males had higher rates of rib fractures and AC joint dislocations, shoulder separations.
So broadly speaking, guys are breaking bones, women are tearing ligaments.
That's the profile the data paints.
Now, I want to pivot to something in the Kanota study that I found, really surprising. Usually we think of wear and tear. The longer you do something, the more broken you are. But the data here suggests something else.
This is what we call the experience shield. It's a fantastic paradox. Kanota found that more years of experience was associated with lower odds of injury.
So the white belts are getting wrecked and the black belts are walking away fine.
That's right. And it makes perfect sense if we connect it back to what we said about defense. A huge part of judo is learning yukimi.
The art of falling.
The art of falling. A novice fights the fall. They stiffen up, they panic, they post that arm. An experienced judoka knows the exact moment they've lost. They relax, they tuck their chin, they slap the mat to dissipate the force, and they plop right back up.
So technique is literally your armor.
It's the best armor you can have.
That's fascinating, and here is where things get weird. There was another finding in that same study that, at first glance, makes no sense at all.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
The athletic trainer paradox.
Yes.
Walk us through this, because it feels like a typo.
It really does. So logic says if you have an athletic trainer or AT on your team, you should be safer, right?
Of course. That's their job. Prevention.
Well, the data showed that athletes with AT support had 1.7 times increased odds of reporting an injury.
Hold on. You're saying if I hire a medic, I am almost twice as likely to get hurt. How is that possible? Are they tripping people?
No, they're not tripping them.
Yeah.
But it stops you in your tracks, right?
Yeah.
It's likely a mix of a couple of things. First, it's a reporting bias.
Meaning?
Meaning, if you twist your ankle and there's no doctor, you just limp home and ice it, it never becomes a statistic. But if an AT is standing right there, you go to them, they examine it, they log it, suddenly it's an official injury, so the expert increases the count.
But there's a second, more controversial theory. It's called risk compensation. Think about what an AT does. They tape you up. They give you braces. They manage your pain.
They keep you in the game.
They keep you in the game. Without an AT, a minor sprain forces you to rest for a week. With an AT, you get a fancy tape job, and you go right back out there to train at full intensity.
So the support lets you override your body's own warning signals.
It lets you function in the danger zone. You're training harder on a compromised body because you have this safety net. And eventually that minor injury becomes a major one.
Wow. That's a profound thought. We think we're buying safety, but we might just be buying the ability to ignore pain.
It forces you to ask if keeping the athlete on the mat is the same thing as keeping the athlete healthy. Well, speaking of healthy, we've talked a lot about bones and ligaments. But the Kanota study looked at another side of this. We usually talk about being broken, not being sick.
Yes, the hidden opponent, illness. 9% of the athletes in that study reported being ill. And the biggest risk factor wasn't bad luck. It was the calendar.
To schedule.
The training frequency. They found that athletes training more than 5 days a week had 5.1 times higher odds of becoming ill.
5 times higher, just from adding that 6th or 7th day of training.
It's a massive statistical cliff. It points directly to overtraining syndrome. Push the body that hard, day after day, you're just chronically suppressing your immune system.
So that whole no days off culture is actually making you 5 times more likely to get the flu.
Scientifically, yes. In their data, COVID was number 1, but digestive issues were second, and skin issues were third.
Skin issues I get, sweaty mats, close contact. But digestive issues, that sounds systemic.
It is. It's the body just saying, I can't handle this. And there's another huge factor that both studies touched on that makes all this worse. Weight.
The worst part of any combat sport.
The Kanota study showed athletes with a BMI over 30 had about 3 times higher odds of illness. But Carvalho specifically noted a correlation between the need to lose weight and injury frequency.
So the act of cutting weight is what breaks you.
Think about it. You're dehydrated. Your electrolytes are a mess. You're in a caloric deficit. And then you go do an explosive, high-impact sport.
Your brain is slow, your muscles are cramping.
Exactly. Your reaction time is off by a split second. Remember posting that arm. If you're sharp, maybe you tuck it. If you're dehydrated and exhausted, you're too slow, and your elbow snaps.
This whole thing paints a really complex picture. It's a beautiful sport, but the culture of training 7 days a week and cutting weight might be actively sabotaging athletes.
It's a very delicate balance. The data shows us where the risks are concentrated. It's the knees and shoulders. It's defensive movements. It's overtraining.
So if you're a coach or a parent listening to this, what's the takeaway? Because you're not going to just stop doing judo.
And you shouldn't. But the takeaway is that the gentle way requires smart preparation. You need to be doing prehab that specifically targets knee stability and shoulder mobility. It's mandatory, not optional.
And maybe rethink the schedule a bit.
Absolutely. That illness data is a screaming red flag. If training 6 days a week makes you 5 times more likely to get sick, maybe 5 days is the sweet spot. Rest is immune system maintenance.
And that experience shield idea, that really stuck with me.
It's the most hopeful part of all this. It proves that good technique is a safety mechanism. The rush to be strong, to muscle through things, that's what gets you hurt. Learning to yield, learning to fall, that's your best armor.
So don't be the strongest person in the room. Be the most technical.
That's it.
It is a lot to chew on. We see martial arts through this lens of toughness, but the science here suggests that whole approach might be the very thing holding people back.
It raises a really important question for the culture of the sport. We saw that athletic trainer paradox. It makes me wonder, are we actually measuring safety, or are we just getting better at measuring diagnosis? And if the culture demands training volumes that invite illness and injury, are we really finding the best athletes, or just the ones who manage to survive the system?
Surviving the system versus mastering the art. That is a provocative thought to leave you with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
See you on the next one. Stay safe out there.
Next time on the Judo Science Podcast, episode 38, Rapid Weight Loss in Judo, the injury multiplier nobody wants to talk about.